Introduction to Classical Tibetan, Lesson 3.1. Introduction to Verbs and Linking Verbs. Now that we have some familiarity with nouns, adjectives, and nominal groups, we're going to start talking about verbs. Along with the study of the particles, the study of verbs is a major component of learning Tibetan. The type of verb used in a Tibetan sentence indicates the structure of that sentence and therefore gives you a clue as to which particles to look for in the sentence. So, when you're first learning to understand Tibetan grammar, the very first thing that you should do when you look at a sentence is find the verb. The verb can give you a lot of information about what else is happening in the sentence. In Tibetan, the verb always comes at the end of the sentence. Sometimes particles and words can be omitted from Tibetan if their meaning is clear in context, but the verb is never left out. A verb that ends with the particle pa or ba is the infinitive form of the verb. This is what verbs look like when they're found in a dictionary. But when these verbs are found in a sentence, they usually don't occur with the pa or ba particle. Unlike verbs in English, verbs in Tibetan don't change with respect to the number or person referred to. For example, in English we say, I go, he goes, they go, and so on. The verb changes depending on whether we're using the first, second, or third person, and whether we're talking in terms of the singular or plural. In Tibetan, however, the verb is the same regardless. Nga do, kong do, kong so do. Verbs do change, however, with respect to tense. Tibetan has 3 tenses: present, tandawa, past, depa, and future, maongpa. It also uses the imperative mood, kultsik. Some verbs are the same regardless of tense. Others can have 2, 3, or 4 different forms corresponding to each of the 3 tenses and the imperative mood. Unfortunately, there are no hard and fast rules for learning the different forms of verbs, and you will just have to familiarize yourself with different verb forms over time as you learn more. If you look on page 28 of your textbook, you can see some examples of different verbs that have 1, 2, 3, or 4 forms. If one verb looks the same in different tenses, then you have to infer the tense from the context of the rest of the sentence. For example, the verb shepa, to know, is the same in the present, past, and future tense. So you will have to look at the other parts of a sentence to figure out whether she in a given context should be translated as know, knew, or will know. As we move through the next few lessons, we'll have plenty of opportunities to examine verbs. In general, there are 4 types of verbs. Linking verbs, or copular verbs, are used to link a subject and a predicate. These types of verbs function in the same way as to be in English. Existential verbs show the existence of something. They carry a similar meaning as to exist, or sometimes to be in English. Transitive verbs are found in sentences in which an agent acts on an object that is different from itself. And intransitive verbs are found in sentences in which the agent and object are not different. We'll go through each of these 4 types of verbs in turn, but for today, let's start with linking verbs. Linking verbs equate a subject with a predicate. The most common linking verb in Tibetan is yinpa. So, when you find the word yin at the end of a sentence, ask yourself this: what equals what? Or what is what? For example, let's look at this sentence. Kong bupa yin. Yin here is linking the subject, kong, meaning he, to the predicate, bupa, meaning Tibetan. So this sentence reads, Kong bupa yin. He is Tibetan. With a copular sentence, that is, a sentence that uses a linking verb, neither the subject nor the predicate needs to have any particles to mark them. But sometimes you will find the emphatic particle ni placed after the subject to clarify. For example, Kong bupa yin can also be written as Kong ni bupa yin. Literally, as for him, he is Tibetan. But usually it's redundant to say it like that, and it's okay to just say, he is Tibetan. With copular sentences, the subject always comes before the predicate. If we flip around Kong and Bupa in our example here, the meaning becomes the Tibetan is him. The emphasis is different when the words are flipped around like this. The opposite of yin is ma yin, which is usually shortened to min. So, if we were to write Kong Bupa ma yin, that would mean he is not Tibetan. Now, I mentioned before that verbs are not omitted from Tibetan sentences. The only exception to this rule is in the case of yin. So, if you see a sentence with no verb, you know that yin is the verb that should be inferred. And when you translate sentences with no verb, you should supply the correct form of to be in order for the translation to make sense. The basic structure of a copular sentence is subject, predicate, yin, or A, B, yin. It's translated subject is predicate, or A is B. Pages 30 and 31 in your textbook have a number of examples of copular sentences. Make sure that you can understand them all before moving on to the next lesson. We'll look at a few of them here. Gompa di Karpo yin. So we know that Gompa means monastery. Di means this, which goes along with Gompa. So we have the subject, this monastery. Karpo means white. And then there's yin at the end. So what does this sentence say? This monastery is white. This monastery is white. So remember, we have subject is predicate. Let's try another one. Gewa ni dewe gyu yin. Gewa, meaning virtue, is marked by the emphatic particle ni, so we know that this is the subject of the sentence. That leaves us with the predicate, dewe gyu. We can see that there's a connector particle in there, so this whole thing is a nominal group that's equated with virtue. So what does this nominal group say? Remember that we read phrases with the connector particles from right to left. So we start with gyu, cause. And dewa means happiness. So dewe gyu means cause of happiness. So now let's look at the whole sentence. We have the subject, virtue, and the predicate, cause of happiness, linked by the verb yin. So this sentence reads, virtue is the cause of happiness. Let's try one more. Chö thamche mitakpa. Right away, we can see that there is no verb here, so we have to infer that there is a yin at the end of the sentence. So we can think of this sentence as Chö thamche mitakpa yin. So now let's find the subject. Even if you don't know all of the vocabulary here, you do know some words. Remember that tamche means all. Since this is an adjective, it must be modifying the word that comes before it. Ch. You can look this word up in a dictionary, but for now I'll just tell you. Ch means dharma, or phenomena, or just thing. So, ch tamche means all phenomena. Then we're left with mitakpa. The word takpa means permanent, and the particle mi is a negation. So, mitakpa means impermanent. That's the whole sentence. So when we read it all together, we get all phenomena are, which we have to supply because there's no verb written here, impermanent. All phenomena are impermanent. Take a look at the rest of the examples in your textbook and feel free to ask any questions on the discussion board if you're confused. That's all we'll cover for today. So to recap, the verb always comes at the end of the sentence. Verbs don't change in terms of person or number, but can change depending on tense. There are four main types of verbs. We've just covered the linking verbs today. The linking verb yin is the only verb that can sometimes be omitted from a sentence. Linking verbs follow the structure A, B, yin, subject, predicate, yin.